Well, I guess.
All right. 3, 2.
Do I need to record too?
Do you have a way to record your own audio? 3, 2.
I'm recording just so you guys know.
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Please listen carefully.
What is communication?
The act of taking a thought from my head and putting it into your head.
Essential behavior of life. We have the both blessing and responsibility of trying to foster.
It's the strongest way for two people to convey information to each other.
Bridging what I have in my head to the outside world.
I think it's the ability to share your innermost feelings and thoughts with others.
Whatever it is that we do to express intent and achieve an impact.
Communication is the ability to express your needs, wants, frustrations, and desires to anyone that you feel needs to have that information.
Welcome to episode 33. It is January 7th, 2018. You're listening to Speech Science. I'm Matt Hott. I'm sorry. Got a frog in my throat right at the beginning. That's not a good start. Joined around the country, out in Jersey, Erik Raj.
What's up, guys? Good to see you.
And then I guess we'll continue going west. We got Teresa Richard.
Hello.
And then the person that puts up the wrong time as 6:30 because no one lives on Pacific time, Lucas Stoiber.
That's me. The best coast out here. We get the best time. So thanks for having me. I'm still wide awake.
The best coast, the west coast, the west side. All right, I can take that. I'm on the west side of Cincinnati. We are just coming up after a big old break. I believe episode 32 we recorded a week into December, and then we took 3 weeks off. We lost a founding member, and now we're here. You know what? Over break, I got to see The Darkest Hour using my movie pass. And Darkest Hour, I don't know if it's winning a Golden Globe tonight, but it should.
I can't believe you didn't bring up Star Wars, man. We've been talking about it for weeks here.
I love Star Wars, but I don't know. I figured, I've got other things like being old on New Year's and going to bed. I want to go to bed at 10:30, stayed up till 12:05, and then and then figured out a way to build an $800 machine for $40 for my bowling coaching. Let's start with the guest, Erik Raj. Why are you here? What made you decide to sit down with the three crazies right now?
Well, it isn't every single day that you get the opportunity to connect and be together with some of the smartest SLPs on this planet. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much, you guys. Thanks for the invitation.
Erik, you're already on the You're already on the show. You don't have to butter us up anymore. Teresa, I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, I was going to say we'll keep you around if you keep talking like that about us.
Yeah, I can use some buttering up. That's good. I no objections here.
Teresa, how was your break?
Good. I mean, we're in the middle of snow apocalypse now, and we've been snowed in for 7 days straight, so I'm going completely stir crazy, but good.
Snowpocalypse Now, the unknown sequel to the Napalm in the Morning movie. Yeah. Lucas Stoiber, how was your break?
Well, quick thing about, mobile diagnostics. Teresa, I've seen pictures that you've been doing. You're still out there.
Oh my gosh. It was horrible. Last week was horrible. I drove, it took me 8 hours to get home from a 3-hour drive the other day. The snow was so bad. So yes, I'm still seeing patients in this craziness, but it's not fun, but I do it. So
now that's commitment though. We get half an inch of snow in Portland and everything is shut down.
Yeah, we got 2 feet overnight and everything was canceled, but I still drove and saw my patients. So,
Erik, are you guys getting part of that bomb cyclone out there?
Oh, for sure. Work was closed Thursday and Friday. I've been shoveling out. I don't have a snowblower, so I'm using my muscles, doing it the old-fashioned way, baby.
I have a 4-year-old. Yeah. Is that old-fashioned enough? I can just send him out with his plastic shovel. Oh, okay.
Kids for anyway,
right? Well, as my dad used to say, I had kids, so I don't have to do that.
Yeah, right.
So that's what I tell my son.
My
dad was good. So Erik Raj, explain to the people at home who you are, why you're here, and then also if you happen to have another podcast that people should listen to.
Oh, for sure, Matt. Yeah, so my name is Erik Raj. I'm a speech language pathologist out in New Jersey, and I'm having such a great time hanging out with you guys. I like to keep relevant. I like to, keep up the speed with all things SLP. So I turn to this podcast very often for all the great banter that you guys have, a lot of nice recaps on some of the great articles that you've discovered online. And I use that to help my brain grow a little bit more, because every day we can get a little bit smarter. And when I'm not consuming your podcast, let me tell you, I'm making my own podcast. It's called SLP Trivia Fun. It's a wacky little game show podcast exclusively for speech language pathologists. So if anyone's interested in exploring that experience, check it out. slptriviafun.com, baby.
Ooh, very good. I like how you sell that. I feel like I need to hire you to just introduce me as I walk into rooms and just sell me on stuff.
For
Yeah,
sure,
well,
man.
I got to say, Erik was kind enough to have me on the podcast, a week ago, something like that. And that was some of the most fun that I've had the last month. You do an amazing job. My favorite part is how when I wasn't sure of a question, you would tickle my noggin a little bit. And that's a good phrase. But it's been a few weeks off. We've had an opportunity to sort of get caught up on stuff. I've got my just to splurge here. Oh, I can't even lift it. I've got my Castle 2 all ready to go. I've been digging through the thing. So this is literally how Lucas has fun. If anyone doubted my nerd cred, there we are.
Luke, you're obviously a better speech therapist than I am, because I'm super happy that I got a universal remote that I don't have to program. And you're like, I got a Castle 2.
Hey, you know what? Those things are tough to program. So
they are.
I think I'd rather administer the Castle.
Dude, my new TV, all you have to do is plug it in, and it says, we've detected a Blu-ray player. Point the remote at the Blu-ray player. And I'm like, they're like, your remote has now taken control of the Blu-ray player. And I was like, I don't care if you're listening in and selling it to the NSA. I didn't have to input a code.
Yeah, there we go.
All right,
I'm convinced the Alexa's listening all the time, but I actually know that it's not. So anyway, I talk too much. I'm going to stop now.
Speaking of talking too much, we do want to hear from you at home. So make sure you go to our website, podcast.speechscience.org. From there, you can email us, contact@speechscience.org, or give us a phone call, 503-345-6740. We're also on the Twitters, #SpeechScience, and we will answer to you live during the show. We're also on YouTube live tonight, and Michael McLeod just joined us over there on the YouTube live chat. We do have an email from episode 32. This is from Janice Wright, and if the name sounds familiar, she's the one that I quote at the end of the show about being a willow. And this is going back talking about how we episode 32, we were talking about what we need to do to teach our children, especially children with children of color, in situations that they may find themselves in, especially with the police. She did write this email and gave me permission to read it. She says, "Hi, Matt. It's always amazing to me how, as speech-language pathologists, we decide to compartmentalize what aspects of culture we will deal with as professionals. Our scope of practice indicates that we as professionals shall not discriminate in the delivery of professional services, and that we practice in a manner that considers the impact of cultural variables on the client, patients, and their families. Clinicians are responsible for providing competent services, including cultural responsiveness to clients, patients, and families during all clinician interaction. Responsiveness to the cultural and linguistic differences that affect identification, assessment, treatment, and management of communication disorders. We also have the responsibility to advocate on behalf of consumers, families, and communities at risk for or with communication disorders and differences, swallowing and or swallowing disorders. Implicit in what is suggested by ASHA, I believe, is the responsibility of each of us to examine our own basis when dealing with individuals who are culturally different. In addition, we must recognize that culture is like an iceberg. There are visual aspects of the culture that you can see, but there are so many more cultural aspects of an individual that you do not see, much like an iceberg. To say that what happened to that child with Down syndrome is political, not practice, means that these speech pathologists are abdicating their responsibility to advocate for this young boy and his family. It means that they do not wish to discuss the idiocy of what the teacher did and how, as a part of practice, we need to make sure that this does not happen anywhere else. Discrimination at any level is not political, it is ethical, and we sign a statement each year that we pay our ASHA dues, that we agree to uphold our principles of ethics. If we do not speak up for the voiceless, who will? If we do not call out discrimination and prejudice against those who cannot speak for themselves, who will? The article should be on every SLP listserv and Facebook page and should spark a call to action to make sure that this does not happen to another human being. This is not an issue of politics. It's an issue of practice. Our practice to not only provide services to those with communication disorders, but also to advocate for them as well. So thank you, Janice Wright, for writing in. And that's kind of harking back.
So fantastic. What an amazing sentiment. Janice, thank you so much for sharing that, because that's something that everybody needs to learn. And coming from a background in linguistics, we do learn that. We talk about that all the time, but somehow or another in speech language pathology, not every program addresses that. So very important.
And I think that harkens back to that substitute calling the Down syndrome student a terrorist because she believed he said Allah and boom.
Yeah.
So there you go.
I remember that story. Yeah. Sure.
Erik, I'm sorry, that was a callback to a couple weeks ago, so I don't know if you yet got the chance to listen to that, and same with you, Teresa. But all right, coming up after the break, we're going to talk about an easy way to get needed CEUs. Also, did we quote-unquote cure autism in America? And also combating dementia. You're listening to Speech Science.
Welcome to the Swallow Your Pride podcast, coming soon to the Speech Science Network. I'm your host, Teresa Richard. I'm a board-certified specialist in swallowing and swallowing disorders, and I know firsthand how much confusing and conflicting information there is out there about how we assess and treat swallowing disorders. This podcast is all about bringing everyone together, getting on the same page, being open to new ideas, and using evidence-based treatment strategies for our patients with dysphagia. So let's get into it.
All right, gentlemen, it's getting close to CEU crunch time for license renewals. I know my 3-year renewal is due up from ASHA, and one of the ways that we can do it is MedBridge. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've been actually really happy with MedBridge, and I didn't know a ton about them until about 6 months ago, but we decided to partner with them for the month of October. I got to check out a lot of the classes, and we're really happy to be carrying a deal forward with them. I thought that was going to be a one-time thing, but moving forward, we got a strong partnership. So what's the new deal?
So the new deal is that they have a basic plan that is usually $245, and for right now you can get it for $95. Basically, you have access to over 300 CEU courses in speech language pathology with some of the biggest names in our field, such as Dr. John Arvidson, Dr. Celeste Roseberry McKibben, Dr. Laura D. Thorne, Dr. Scott Yaris, Dr. Laura Epstein, Dr. Betty Yu, Dr. Lynn Williams, Dr. Ann Van Cleek, Dr. Gail J. Richard, Dr. Sherry Robertson, and Dr. Catriona Steele. And recently I came aware that they have about 14 courses dealing with multicultural and linguistically diverse students. So
I was going to say, I just put in my queue, there is a class by Megan Brett called I See Color, and how your own cultural identity shapes your therapy. So that was going to be one of the things that I check out this week.
So how do you get this deal, Lucas?
We have a special URL set up for them. It's at MedBridge, so medbridgeeducation.com/speech-science. Go there to check out the new deal. And also, coming soon, always check our site for promos at promos.speechscience.org, because we got a lot of them going on. I want to make sure that we don't miss mentioning things.
And real quick, if you end up on their shopping cart and you want to take advantage of this deal, you can also enter the promo code Speech Science, one word.
Perfect. It's a great way to get those CEUs you need, and also they do kick us just a little bit back. It helps keep the podcast going, so we can keep bringing it to you free each week. And if they want to find everything, where do they go, Luke?
We have a special URL set up with them, so if you go to medbridgeeducation.com/speech-science, you can check out the current deal, and I'm super psyched to be moving forward with them. They're good people. Coming soon from Speech Science, Talking with Tech. With me, Rachel Madel and Chris Bouguet. What are we going to be talking about?
Stop feeling so daunted by technology.
Push the button. You're not going to break it.
Help people start implementing.
Maybe listen to our podcast and go, well, I could try that tomorrow.
Conversations with the thought leaders behind all this.
I'd also love to hear success stories.
If it's working for you, then maybe it could work for somebody else.
Go to tech.speechscience.org, subscribe to our podcast, and check that site for exclusive content that you won't see anywhere else.
Welcome back to Speech Science, episode 33. I'm Matt Hott, joined around the country, Erik Raj, Teresa Richard, Lucas Stoiber. I like that. Around the country, we got more East Coasters. I'm always happy when we have East Coasters. It means we're not going to be up till midnight. We have to work early. And I just got bad news during the break. Before the show started, I was told I had a 2-hour delay. I just looked it up. It's the wrong Fairfield. So I got to get back to work tomorrow at 7. I'm not happy. I mean, I'm happy, but whatever. All right, let's kick this off into the gear. Are we curing autism? According to the goodnewsnetwork.org, which had a journal of the American Medical Association, since 2014, the rate of reporting diagnoses has relatively remained unchanged. So, are we finally hitting peak saturation? Are we finally getting better at our ability to diagnose? Or is it all the above, none of the above? What do y'all think?
Do they give any information about, obviously not the etiology of autism, but what has been done in previous years?
Says previous surveys have reported a steady increase in ASD prevalence in U.S. children over the past 2 decades. But in recent years, the numbers have hit a, quote, plateau. Between 2014 and 2016, the estimate of children and adolescents with autism was about 2.4%, with no statistically significant increase over 3 years.
When we think about survey-based research like we saw in that article, it did mention that there was 30,000 people that took part in that experience. So we just need to take that into consideration. With regard to the United States, there are, 320-something million people. So can this be generalized? I don't know. I mean, certainly it's data. There's no doubt about that.
I'll take my 30,000 people and I can't even say the word. Take whatever I want out of that. Are you saying 30,000 people may not be enough to apply to the entire U.S. population?
I don't know. Numbers are a really wacky thing. We can make numbers do anything they want.
Well, and was this a self-report study, right? Was there a control group, and what was the control? Were there comorbidities? 30%, and I think we'll get to this later when we talk about one individual in particular, but, there's 30% comorbidity of OCD with autism spectrum disorder. I object to the word cure, and I've spoken about this before, and I'm going to keep the monologue short, right, because this is my passion area. But, I've done work for the Autism Society of America, as well as, of course, the Autism Society of Oregon. And I don't like that word, because there is an implication, and I'm sure people will disagree with me and send me emails, but there is an implication there that your child is, not what you want them to be, right? Which is a value judgment that I'm not comfortable with. So I guess that's all I really have to say. I would love to find, some countermanding evidence. I'd love to find some, to something that we could do to, to reduce the prevalence of autism. But I don't purport to know what that is. My job is to, serve those individuals as best I can.
Did you guys see this article about in London, they are trying a college for young people with autism only?
Yeah, actually, Portland State University here in Portland has a program along those lines as well. It's not just autism; they take all sorts of developmental disabilities, and I think it's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, and I could say, just with regards to the United States, I feel like that's a thing that's starting to become a lot more prevalent now, as opposed to maybe 5-10 years ago. The fact that we are thinking about the aging population of the child who has autism. So having things in play at the high school level, having things in play once they're in the college level to keep growing that social aspect of communication is something that is very much appreciated from the point of view as a clinician. No doubt about that.
Right. Now, Teresa, we haven't involved you so much because I know you work with older adults, but one thing I see a lot in pediatric populations with ASD diagnoses is stuffing, right? Is that something you see with older adults that you work with as well?
Oh, absolutely. We see it a lot, but part of it is that how the patient has presented their entire life, or Is that a new thing, or because there's obviously a lot of factors to weigh there, but that's just a big thing in dysphagia now, is kind of identifying what's normal and what someone's been doing for several years before. So if that's, I think it's kind of prevalent in the cerebral palsy population as well, is that's how these people have been eating and fed for years and years and years, and they've never presented with dysphagia, or they've never presented with pneumonia. And now all of a sudden someone thinks that it's abnormal, but it's been their normal for years.
Right. So I work with a student who's 13 who has juvenile onset Huntington's disease, and he aspirates everything, but he's 13 and he's incredibly healthy, right?
Right.
In a situation like that where he's able to fight off pneumonia, would you still make the same recommendations as you would with an older adult? How about that?
No, probably not. Because we do know that we have people that are functional aspirators. They aspirate constantly, but for some reason they don't acquire pneumonia. So, are we going to try to recommend some safer strategies? Probably, but are they going to follow through with them? Is that how the patient wants, or how the person wants to be eating? Do they want to be doing these goofy strategies, or if it's not broke, why fix it?
And that's chin tuck, right?
Yes. Well, yeah. There's a lot of. Yeah,
I've listened to your podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. You wouldn't just recommend a random chin tuck for no reason without knowing that is for sure, making them not aspirate anymore.
Right.
Well, and
just to mention too, Teresa runs the podcast Swallow Your Pride, and which is incredibly popular, and I highly recommend it. I think everybody here is a podcaster. This is kind of amazing.
We're all professionals all of a sudden. Now, could it also be linked, I guess, the survey and identifying and maybe not identifying yourself or your children on the spectrum, the rise of autism in the mainstream media, that you've got shows like on Netflix, you've got situations like The Good Doctor, where maybe they say, oh, well, my son, no, he doesn't act like the good doctor. So no, he's not on the spectrum, or he's not like Sheldon. So he's not on the spectrum. Maybe that's one of the reasons why people self-report. No need to go get a diagnosis there.
Right. Because they're a toe walker and they like D&D, all of a sudden they're, on the spectrum. Right. Yeah, I find what happens in the media to be pretty frustrating in a lot of ways. I'll let other people chime in.
I do wonder if it has anything to do with the early detection, though. I was alarmed with my own child. I think it's, you go to the pediatrician at like 3 or 4 months and they're already asking you, early signs. I was like, what?
Yeah. Right.
I have a 1-year-old and I look for him.
Sorry, go ahead.
I said I just have a 1-year-old and I'm constantly on the lookout for signs, and I think that's part of it, just being a clinician, part of that early diagnosis. I think sometimes we're our own worst family members, because we're like, should he be saying something right now? He only lifts his shoulders for the word up. Should he be saying up right now? And it's like, sometimes we can overdiagnose our own. But I'm sorry, Luke, where were you going to go?
Well, I was going to say that a lot of the things that we used to associate with special education, like orthopedic impairments or Down syndrome, are detectable in utero. And one thing that happens is pregnancies are terminated, right? Which didn't happen when I was growing up, at least not to the same degree. And I don't mean to get all controversial with that, but I know people that have done so. I read about people that have done so. And so I wonder if that's part of the factor that, we just see more ASD than we used to, right?
True.
Because it used to be mixed in more.
Well, I don't want to change topics too much, but Luke, you have a clip for us here. Set up the clip. It's for Carly Fleischman, I believe.
Yeah, Carly Fleischman. So we did an interview. So I have a second podcast called Talking with Tech, along with my co-hosts Rachel Madel and Chris Bouguet, which is pretty much about educational technology in SPED. Special education, as well as augmentative and alternative communication. And for those of you who have seen or saw the Night of Too Many Stars, right, there was an incident where confetti blew up on stage, right? And this individual wasn't comfortable with that sensory experience, and also wasn't comfortable because of her OCD. And we happened to interview the person who had created the app that she uses for communication. So it's a pretty brief story, but it is really interesting. And he got to meet Stephen Colbert and Jon Stewart, which I'm enormously jealous of. So without further ado, I'd love to hear his take. And if you want to hear the whole story, check out Talking with Tech.
Well, speaking of success stories, I do have to ask you about the not to be all fanish about the Night of a Million Stars piece, but so a user of your app was there. I would just love to hear about it. I'm so jealous about the Stephen Colbert experience.
Well, it was a marvelous night. Carly Fleischman is a real rock star in a field of autism and nonverbal communications. She was using the application for an interview with Stephen Colbert on Night of Too Many Stars, an HBO special a few weeks ago. And the interview began well. Carly has not only autism, but an obsessive compulsive disorder. And unfortunately, they had blown confetti all over the stage, which was her personal kryptonite, as she called it. So she focused on the paper on the stage, and the interview was aborted and concluded live on HBO for special. However, Stephen Colbert and Jon Stewart and others very graciously suggested actually on the program that Stephen Colbert, he wanted her to come back onto the Late Show and finish the interview as intended. He thought that her comments and her interview questions were very fun.
That's great. And so when is that? That's coming up soon, right? Potentially this week or next week? I've forgotten the date.
Not sure. It's scheduled, and so we'll be able to update you as.
So that's pretty cool. That so he's the one that designed the app.
Well, so he actually designed or had a large part in designing the brain-computer interface element of it. The app that was used is actually called Prose. And it's really interesting, actually. Instead of having a keyboard or these other things, you actually communicate through gestures. So you could, make a gesture that indicates E or B, and it's not user specific. It's based on whatever the user wants to create. So I'm very impressed by it. I think it's interesting. I think that to some extent it might require a higher level user, which of course Carly is. But I was really impressed by the conversation. I really like that gentleman, Tom Ladd, and I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes in the future.
Any other closing thoughts on autism for this week? I feel like every week we kind of touch a little bit on autism, but not every week we have Erik Raj or Teresa Richard on the show.
Yeah, I'd actually be curious, Erik, one thing we haven't talked about at all, and maybe you can give us 30 seconds about your work in fluency.
Sure, yeah. So I specialize in people who stutter, so working together with those individuals to help grow and improve their overall communication abilities. So stuttering is definitely that aspect of the field that makes my heart go pitter patter, pitter patter. So if you ever got any stuttering articles, I'd love to chime on in. I'd love to talk some shop.
Hey, come back next week. Well, we'd love to have you. Do you feel like there's an age or a medical diagnosis that sort of precludes students from continuing to work on their fluency?
I'm sorry, you cut out for a second.
Oh, I apologize. Do you feel like there's an age or a medical diagnosis that perhaps precludes a student from, being productive, continuing to work on their fluency after the age of 10 or something along those lines?
Motivation is always a key factor, I think, with regard to all diagnoses. And it all boils down to, I think, the clinician. The clinician really has to take the opportunity to get to know the client in order to set up goals and objectives that work with that client, and also take into consideration maybe the life of that client, the client's wants, needs, their interests. So yeah, it does get tricky when you work with maybe some of those older middle school-ish type students. But if you really just take a step back and you try to figure out what is that thing that makes them really excited, those clinicians that do that can very well motivate that child, that young person, to really want to focus on some of those goals and objectives that you put in play.
You couldn't be more right. I have a high school fluency group that we meet every Friday afternoon, and for the first couple of weeks of school, it was we had a real hard time trying to figure out a reason why we were meeting, other than, hey kids, your IEP says I legally have to meet with you, and then about 6 weeks in, most of the kids started getting jobs. And all of a sudden, they had new people that had to listen to them. And the one works a drive-through, and the cook was getting mad at him and was like, "Just say what you want." And he was like, "How do I do it?" So you're right. Trying to find that motivation at the high school level is it's unique.
Yeah, and anytime we could try to role play in my world of SLP, I'm always trying to do that, because we have these 4 walls of our speech therapy room, but if we could get creative, we could turn those 4 walls into potentially a restaurant or some sort of setting where that person could try to emulate the drive-through type experience. So I do a lot of that in the therapy that I'm lucky enough to be a part of with these wonderful clients that I have.
That's great. So I just want to comment too that Erik has been kind enough to provide us with a raffle for his newest app that's coming out. So if you're interested in participating in that, you got to stick around till the end of the podcast, and we'll give you details.
And you know what? At home, if you are thinking, I want to participate in the show, head over to our website, podcast.speechscience.org. From there, you can email us, contact@speechscience.org. Give us a phone call, leave us a voicemail, 503-345-6740. If you're on the Twitters, hashtag SpeechScience. Also, we are on the YouTube Live on the YouTube. I sound so old. We are on YouTube Live. We got a few people in there, Michael, Perry, Myling, a few people in there kind of talking and having their own discussion based on what we're having on. So we welcome you there as well. And now for something completely different.
Yeah, and I do want to. Can I say one thing about?
Got better.
And that is Terry Jones, Monty Python's own Terry Jones, diagnosed with dementia. Luke, you talked over the video clip. How dare you?
Can we cut it? I'm sorry. I thought
No,
we were
live. We are live. We are
I'm
live.
So sorry.
All right, so
that was my fault.
Celebrities with dementia, I think, is bringing more attention to dementia. And Luke, we're live. We can see you on air.
I know. That's why I'm saying my fault. So everyone knows that was totally my fault.
Teresa, I am excited to ask you this question. I was thinking about this ever since I brought this topic up. And I don't mean to sound like the really dumb clinician right now, but I'm going to be
Stop it. You never are. You ask great questions.
All right, are you ready? I got my paper in front of me.
Good. Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, so with patients with dementia, this sounds so bad to ask. How do people forget to swallow? Like, what happens that they forget to swallow?
I don't know that I can answer that question.
Okay, well, I don't feel so dumb.
No. I mean, it's such a complicated, convoluted question, and a lot of it goes hand in hand with that disease progression. So a lot of times just kind of the theme, I guess, of what I'm talking about today is if we can't always treat everything. We are a helping profession. We love helping our patients, but some patients we just can't help, and as the dementia disease progression continues to evolve, there's sometimes some things that we just can't do, and you can't make a person swallow when the mechanism itself has broken down. So as much as we love to rehab our patients and, getting in there early enough, a lot of times we can provide some strategies and some tips to family members, but yeah, sorry, that's kind of a lot of a convoluted question.
So is it that the mechanism breaks down as dementia kicks in, or is it just, you've taught me so much that I started to take back on dysphagia patients.
One of the components of the disease progression is actually like almost like an anorexia. And I had an episode with Dan Weinstein, I believe it was either episode 5 or 6. And Dan does a phenomenal job of explaining dementia and dysphagia. And anorexia almost plays a huge role. And some of these patients will go a few days without eating, but they're not losing weight. So, some SLPs say, well, we have to get them an appetite stimulant. And is that really our role? That's really should be left up to the dietitian to control calorie intake. But again, is that something we should be forcing someone to eat? Should we be diagnosing them with dysphagia when that's just part of the disease progression and we can't really do anything to stop that?
Now, Erik, do you see any dementia patients in your practice, or is it solely just fluency?
Yeah, I do not see dementia patients in my practice.
Do you feel like there's a point in terms of quality of life where you just say, go for it? You know what I mean? Like stop thickening liquid, or is that
absolutely?
Okay.
We have to think of like the evidence-based triad, and there's, a huge component of that is what the patient wants. And I think a lot of times we forget that we bark orders or we put people on diets, and what does the patient want? What is in the patient's wishes? What does the family want? And that's a huge component with dementia and end of life, therapy. But yeah, that plays a huge role. And if I go in and I'm going to make all these recommendations, but that's not what the patient wants, then what am I doing?
Right. Good. Thank you for saying that, because I've always wondered.
Yeah.
I know when I go into someone's home, I'm always telling them, especially now, Teresa, since you've beaten me back on the right pathway, is to basically tell them that they're driving the train. My job is just to get them to the station they want to go to.
Total. That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
They're like, I'm going to drink my thin Coke in front of you. And you're like, I would really like it if you just made it honey thick, but all right, that's fine. Just cough for 10 minutes. It'll be okay. I know 911's on the way. It'll be okay. But
I mean, that's what they want, so who are we to tell them they can't? So we're not the diet police.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I love hearing this conversation because we always hear in our field that individualized approach, right? And what better way to really show that individualized approach when we take into consideration the thoughts and the wants and the needs from those people that we sit in front of.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
That's what it all comes down to, right? And ADLs, right? Activities of daily living. Sometimes that trumps everything.
I did have a patient I was covering at a nursing home, and he said, I know you can't do anything for me because you're only here for a day, but I really don't care about the puree, but I just want milk. I don't care if I choke, just milk. I'll sip everything else through a straw. And I was like, I'm only here for a day, man. I'm not going to make that big of a change on your chart, but let's get some water. Let's just see what happens there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, think of how.
Go ahead, please.
Think of how much just giving that patient milk, how much of an increase in quality of life is that person going to have now?
Oh, yeah,
right?
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, for some of these people, you take away just the one thing that means so much to them, and who are we to say you can't have that? So, and a lot of times these patients aren't even getting instrumental swallowing assessments, so it's just our best guess. We don't really know these things, and even if we are getting instrumentals and we do know, it's just our job to educate them, tell them what could potentially happen, but the ball's in their court, and they're a person, and quality of life is a huge issue.
Teresa, did you get a chance to read that article from The Independent that I sent over?
I read all of the articles.
Okay,
but
it's the one about eating at the same time may help dementia.
Yeah. I mean, I love that stuff too, because I'm like one of my other passions is kind of health and nutrition and stuff like that. And I've been hearing about, it's kind of called like the intermittent fasting method. There's a lot of good research to support that. But yeah, I think that's kind of one of our roles too, is to learn what we can to educate the patient and the family, because they're the ones that are. It's almost like you have to be on the other side of the. What am I trying to say?
You just lost it.
When you go through something, you obviously advocate for it. So if we can help tell these families this may be a cause, so if we can get this information out there.
I know I do some music therapy. Luke, do you do any dementia therapy at all?
Oh yeah, well, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, as the course of my work with AAC, I work from from birth to the end of life. So So I do music therapy. I do it, even with 10 and 12-year-olds. And it's been very successful. One of our contributors is Dr. Giovanna Sandiford, and she's had incredible success with melodic intonation therapy, or melodic based intonation therapy. So I'm a believer, and there's some clients that will not be very responsive, and then you put on the song from the 50s and they're dancing with me and singing along, and it makes me wonder I took the neurology, we all did, right? But there are elements that I just don't understand, and that doesn't mean I'm not gonna use them to make that person happy, right?
Yeah, it's weird to experience from the clinician side. It's even weirder to experience from the family side. My grandma passed over Christmas break from complications of dementia, and and I don't say that to be woe is me or sad, but like it was interesting that as I was sitting by her bedside the last couple of days, and I said, "Hey, Kim, my wife, and I will take care of the cat," and she opened her eyes, sat up, looked at me, smiled, and then laid back down, closed her eyes. It was kind of like, me sitting down saying, "Hey, it's Matt, your grandson, not a register, but the feline friend." The brain's weird, man.
Do you use a lot of music with your students, Erik?
Let me tell you, the brain is such a complex thing, right? And when I personally hear music, all of those feel good, explosions happen in my brain. So I echo everything that you guys are describing. I do a lot of music type stuff with all of my students. I play some guitar, not very well, but I do play guitar. Even when I work with some of my articulation kiddos, like I'll bust out the acoustic guitar, and whatever their target sound is, I'll attempt to do an improv type song, and then I'll point to them, and then I'll get them to say like, "Rabbit was running, din din din." And I work with a lot of students who stutter, and I had one high school age student who was really into spoken word. And spoken word, there's a real rhythmic feel to that. And we incorporated just so much of that musical aspect into that therapy. And I think that music really does have its place in motivating a lot of our students, a lot of our clients, and really just making the brain that much more receptive to the things we want the brain to be receptive to.
Well, if ever you're interested, I know about as little about fluency as I do about dysphagia, so it'd be great to have you on to talk about this. I know a fair amount about compensatory strategies, of course, and these other things, but I don't think I've ever actually remediated fluency. Although, don't tell my old supervisors that. I didn't say that.
Erik, I feel like just sitting here talking to you and listening for just a moment, I've realized how uncool of a therapist I am. You're like, no. You're like, I play guitar, not great, and then I just make up a song on the way. And I'm like doing my fluency groups like, all right, so here's a carrier phrase to get you through while you're saying your stuff at the Chicken Fresh. All right, let's get out.
Well, in articulation too. There's this little city in Oregon, in the middle of nowhere, that's called Rural Oregon, Rural Aurora. Rural Aurora, Oregon. And I figure if anybody can say that, you are released. That is the test. No more speech therapy.
Well, Erik, I feel like we brought you on. My kids love Erik's dance articulation apps. They dance to the music after saying the R sounds. Lucas Melodic-Based Communication Therapy. That's from Mellow Speech. So there you go, Erik. You got a fan for your you have a dance articulation app?
I sure do. I think music is just the best, and we need more music in this world.
Where's my phone? Is it on iTunes?
You bet. Give it a download. Then you'll be cool.
I know.
Yes.
I'm just kidding. You're cool.
No. So, Erik, I was just about to say I feel like our stories this week kind of differed away from your area of expertise. But while we're still live on YouTube, you get 30 seconds, a Lucas version of 30 seconds, so it could be as long as you need it to be.
So 10 minutes.
Yeah, 10 minutes. I was going to say, sell your wares. Tell us where we can find you, what we need you for, and blah, blah, blah.
For sure. Well, I'm all about connecting, so if anyone wants to chit-chat with me and check out some of the stuff that's keeping me busy in the world of SLP, check out my website. It's erikxraj.com. I got a little blog on there. I kind of, talk about some of the cool stuff that I'm doing in the therapy room. I also talk about some of the podcasting goodness that I do on the side as well. So by all means, check it out, ericxraj.com. Hit me up. We'll be best friends.
Hey, we follow each other on Twitter. I'm happy about that.
Well, and another reminder, we are going to have that giveaway. So if you go to podcast.speechscience.org, that'll be up already. And then, of course, we will have the full interview up on Tuesday, right, Matt? Is that?
Yeah, the whole podcast launches on Tuesday.
Cool.
So, okay, if you're listening live on YouTube, unfortunately, this is where we're going to end. If you're listening while you're driving to work on the podcast, coming up after the break, Luke, you sat down with MedBridge to talk about CEUs. Is that correct?
Yeah, and so I do want to give one little disclaimer, which is that we do have a financial relationship with MedBridge, right? We run their ads, we have their ads on the website, but there's a very specific reason for that, and we've been very judicious about what who we choose to partner with, and I have just been blown away by what they do. I mean, they have an incredible assortment. I mean, I think, and Teresa can speak to this too. What they have 60 ASHA fellows or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's more than that, but such high quality professionals from our field.
Yeah, it's wild. But then in addition to that, there's there's training exercises both for SLPs and for clients. There's all kinds of these awesome 3D anatomical models. You can assign things to your clients and then track progress over time. And they're growing, exponentially. I mean, I'm just so impressed. And they started out in the OTPT kind of world, and frankly, we all could stand to learn a little bit of that. So, if you go to any part of our website, listen to the podcast, you'll figure out how to get there. And Teresa, anything else to add?
No, I wish I had the exact number. I think they talk about it in the episode, but they're just growing so much, and it's not, I harp on the dysphagia piece because it's what I'm passionate about and it's so thorough, but they do have cognition, voice, tons of language, articulation. So they are expanding into kind of all realms of SLP, which I think is so cool because a lot of us do wear many, many hats. So.
Yep. And right now it's $95 for a year instead of the normal price is $450, although they have it on sale for $395 right now. So even so, it's a $300 discount. So we have that deal for one more month and it lasts a year. So now's the time, go ahead and do it and you won't be sad about it.
Well, that interview will come up right after the break. You're listening to Speech Science. All right, YouTubers, this is where we are saying goodbye. So long and farewell. We appreciate that you jumped in. All the way, shout outs to Myling, Michael, Perry, and everybody else that is listening all the way up there. So we will see you on the flip side. We're going to head over, record the ending. You can find this over on Roku or YouTube.com.
And some comments that have come in directly. Myling, for example, tells me that it's not a problem that I interrupted you and that I'm very cute. And Mr. Perry Flynn, who is with ASHA, says that along with dementia, next time we should be talking about traumatic brain injury and some other things. So this is something to put on our list in the future.
Perfect. All right.
Thank you so much for everyone who's participated.
Bye, YouTubers. Bye.